thought inheriting my father's house would finally fix my life. But 3 days after the funeral, my sister accused me of stealing the inheritance. And the worst part? Everyone believed her. Even the lawyer looked at me like I was a stranger, like I had walked in from the street just to steal something that wasn't mine. But my sister Emily wasn't finished. She stood in the middle of the office, arms crossed, eyes cold, and said something that made my stomach drop. "You always wanted more from Dad. Now you finally took it." The room went silent. I felt every pair of eyes turned toward me. The truth was, I had barely spoken to my father during the last few years of his life. Not because I didn't care, but because Emily had slowly pushed me out of the family. At least, that's what I thought back then. What I didn't know was that my father had been planning something for months. Something Emily didn't know about. And when I would finally discover it, everything in our family would explode. But at that moment, sitting in the lawyer's office, I just felt confused. Because according to the documents on the table, Emily was right. My father had left everything to her. The house, the land, the savings, even his old truck. Every single line of the will had her name on it. Not mine. I stared at the papers again and again, hoping I had missed something. But the lawyer slowly closed the folder. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Emily smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one. The kind of smile that told me she had been expecting this moment, and that scared me more than anything. Because Emily and I used to be close when we were kids. We built forts in the backyard. We rode bikes down the same dusty road. When our mom died, we promised each other we would always stay together. But something changed over the years, and I never understood exactly when. After the meeting ended, Emily walked past me in the hallway. She stopped for just a second, close enough that I could hear her whisper, "You should probably pack your things soon." I frowned. "What?" "The house is mine now," she said calmly, "and I don't want you living there." Then she walked away. Just like that. I stood there in the empty hallway for almost a minute. My father had been buried only 3 days ago, and already my sister was throwing me out of the house we both grew up in. Something about it didn't feel right. Not just unfair, wrong. Because my father wasn't the kind of man who forgot his own son. At least, I hoped he wasn't. That night I walked through the house slowly. Every room felt quiet and strange without him. The kitchen still smelled faintly like coffee. His old chair was still near the window, and his tools were exactly where he had left them in the garage. But then something strange happened. When I opened the drawer in his desk, I noticed a small envelope taped to the inside. I froze, because my name was written on it, not printed, handwritten, in my father's messy handwriting. My heart started beating faster. I slowly pulled the envelope off the wood. For a moment, I just stared at it. If this had been important, why hadn't the lawyer mentioned it? Why hadn't Emily said anything? And why was it hidden? I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single folded piece of paper and a small brass key. But when I read the first line of the letter, my entire body went cold because my father had written something I never expected to see. "Son, if you are reading this, it means Emily followed the plan." And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. My father had known exactly what was going to happen, but I had no idea what his plan actually was until I read the next sentence. My hands were shaking when I unfolded the rest of the letter. For a moment, I thought about stopping, because something deep inside me was already whispering that whatever was written there might change everything I believed about my family. But I forced myself to keep reading. My father's handwriting was uneven, like he had written the letter in a hurry. "Son, If Emily is the one who received the will, then things happened exactly as I expected. I blinked. Expected? What did that even mean? I read the line again, slower this time, then the next one. I needed to be sure who I could trust. A strange chill ran down my spine. My father had always been a quiet man, careful, observant, but he never played games with people. At least, yeah, I didn't think he did. The letter continued. For the past year, money has been disappearing from my accounts. My eyes widened. That didn't make sense. My father barely spent anything. He lived simply, fixed his own truck, grew vegetables in the backyard. Half the time, he still used tools older than me. So where could the money have gone? Then I read the next sentence, and the only person who had access besides me was Emily. I felt like the floor had suddenly shifted under my feet. No, that couldn't be right. Emily could be cold sometimes, even selfish, but stealing from our father? I shook my head and kept reading. I confronted her once. She denied everything, but I saw the fear in her eyes. The letter paused there for a few lines, like he had stopped writing for a moment. Then the next paragraph began. So I made a decision. My breathing slowed. I created a new will, one that gives everything to Emily. My stomach dropped. So he had done this on purpose, but why? The answer came in the next line. It was the only way to see what she would do next. I leaned back in the chair slowly. Suddenly, the lawyer's office, Emily's smile, her whisper in the hallway, it all felt different, like pieces of a puzzle I didn't understand yet. The letter continued. If Emily takes the inheritance and pushes you away, then you will know the truth about her. A cold weight settled in my chest, because that was exactly what had happened. My father had predicted it perfectly, but the next line was even stranger. Which means it is time for you to open the lock. I looked down at the small brass key lying on the desk. Lock? What lock? I quickly turned the page over. At the bottom, my father had written one final instruction. In the garage, under the red toolbox. My heart started pounding again. The garage. That was where he spent most of his time, fixing engines, building things, sometimes sitting quietly with the radio playing old country songs. I grabbed the key and walked outside. The night air felt cold and still. The garage door creaked when I opened it. Everything looked normal. Tools on the wall, workbench in the corner, his old truck parked inside. But when I moved the heavy red toolbox, I finally saw it. A small metal hatch built into the floor. I had lived in this house for 20 years, and I had never seen it before. There was a lock on the hatch, and the brass key in my hand fit perfectly. For a moment I hesitated, because something told me that whatever was inside that hatch was the real inheritance my father left behind. But I had no idea what I was about to uncover, and I definitely didn't know that Emily was already on her way back to the house. The brass key felt heavier than it should have. I stared at the small metal hatch for a long moment, my heart beating louder with every second. If my father had hidden something here, it had to be important. But another thought kept creeping into my mind. What if Emily already knew about this? What if that was the real reason she wanted me out of the house so quickly? I pushed the thought away and slid the key into the lock. For a second it didn't move. Then I turned it. Click. The sound echoed inside the quiet garage. My breath caught. Slowly I pulled the hatch open. A cool draft of air rose from below, carrying a faint smell of metal and dust. Under the floor was a small concrete compartment. Not very deep. Maybe 3 feet. Inside there was only one thing. A black metal box. Old, heavy. The kind people used decades ago to store documents. My hands were trembling when I lifted it out. The box was locked too, but this time the keyhole looked different. Smaller, and the brass key didn't fit. Great, I muttered quietly. For a moment I just sat there on the garage floor staring at it. My father had clearly planned this carefully. First the hidden hatch, then the box, which meant whatever was inside. He didn't want just anyone opening it. But then something strange caught my eye. There was a thin envelope taped to the bottom of the box. I carefully peeled it off. Just like the one in his desk, my name was written on it. For Daniel. My chest tightened. My father hadn't called me that in years. He usually just said, "Son." I opened the envelope. Inside was a short note. "Daniel, if you found the box, it means you followed my instructions." I swallowed and kept reading. "The second key is not in the house." My eyebrows furrowed. Then where was it? The next line answered the question. "Do you remember the lake?" Of course I remembered the lake. When we were kids, my father used to take Emily and me fishing there every summer. A quiet place about 20 minutes outside town. The memory made something twist inside my chest, because those were some of the last good moments our family had together. But why would the key be there? I read the last lines of the note. "Under the old pier, inside the fourth plank." I blinked. That sounded ridiculously specific, almost like he expected someone else might try looking for it. Then I noticed one final sentence at the bottom, and this one made my stomach tighten. "Do not trust Emily." I stared at the words for a long time. Not because they were shocking, but because my father had never spoken badly about her. Not once. Even when she started arguing with him more. Even when she began controlling his finances. He always defended her. But now he was warning me. And suddenly the quiet garage didn't feel so safe anymore. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Emily stood there watching my face carefully. Waiting. Studying every reaction. And that's when I realized something terrifying. She already knew, or at least, she suspected enough to come looking tonight. I forced a small laugh. "A box?" I said. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes didn't move from mine, not even for a second. "Come on, Daniel," she said softly. "You always were a terrible liar." A knot formed in my stomach, because she was right. I had never been good at hiding things, but I also knew one thing for sure now. If Emily knew about the box, she definitely didn't know what was inside it. Otherwise, she wouldn't be asking. She would have already taken it. She stepped further into the garage. Her boots echoed on the concrete floor. "You found Dad's letter, didn't you?" My heart slammed against my ribs. So she knew about the letter too? How much had she discovered? I stayed silent. Emily sighed. Then she rubbed her forehead like she was tired. "Look," she said quietly. "We don't have to do this the hard way." I frowned. "The hard way?" She gave a small shrug. "You give me the box. We split whatever's inside. 50-50. That confirmed it. She didn't have it. Relief flickered inside me. But it didn't last long, because another question appeared immediately. If she didn't have the box, how did she know it existed? I crossed my arms. "What makes you think there's a box?" Emily smiled again. But this time the smile felt different. Less confident. Almost nervous. "Because Dad wasn't as careful as he thought," she said. My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" For a moment she hesitated, and that was the first crack I had seen in her calm behavior tonight. Then she said something that changed everything. "2 months ago, I saw him hiding it." My mind raced. 2 months ago. That meant my father had already suspected something back then. which meant the whole plan had been in motion much longer than I realized. Emily continued slowly. He thought I was asleep, but I followed him to the garage. Her eyes drifted briefly toward the red toolbox, then back to me. I saw him lift the hatch. I felt a cold wave move through my body, so she knew exactly where it was. She just didn't have the key. And that's when I understood something even worse. If Emily had seen the hatch 2 months ago, then she had probably tried to open it, which meant she knew the box existed, but not the rest of the plan, not the lake, not the second key. She stepped closer again. Daniel, she said softly, whatever Dad hid, it belongs to both of us. I studied her face carefully, trying to decide if there was any truth left in it, any trace of the sister I grew up with, but all I saw was calculation. And something else. Fear. Then she said one more thing, something that made my pulse explode. Unless, she added quietly, you already know what's inside. I shook my head slowly. No idea. She watched me for a few seconds, long, silent. Then she suddenly smiled again, but this time it looked almost relieved. Good, she said, because the next word she spoke made the entire situation far more dangerous than I had imagined. Then you should probably know. She leaned slightly closer. I'm not the only person looking for it. For a second, I thought I had heard her wrong. You're not the only person looking for it. The words echoed in my head. What does that mean? I asked slowly. Emily didn't answer right away. She walked past me and leaned against the workbench like she was trying to decide how much to say. The garage felt smaller suddenly, quieter. Finally, she spoke. Dad wasn't just hiding money. My stomach tightened. What are you talking about? She sighed. You really didn't know anything, did you? Her voice didn't sound mocking this time. It sounded almost surprised. I shook my head. Emily, just say it. She hesitated. Then she said something that made my heart start pounding again. 3 months ago, 2 men came to the house. I frowned. What men? They said they were investors, she said. Business partners. That didn't make sense. My father had never been a businessman. He fixed engines, built furniture, sometimes helped neighbors repair tractors. Dad didn't have business partners, I said. Emily nodded slowly. That's what I thought too. She paused. But they weren't asking about business. My chest tightened. What were they asking about? Emily looked straight at me. They wanted something Dad had. A strange feeling crept into my stomach. What? Her answer came quietly. A ledger. The word hung in the air. A ledger of what? I asked. Emily rubbed her arms like she suddenly felt cold. I don't know exactly, but I heard part of their conversation. She swallowed. They said the ledger had records, payments, names. A bad feeling settled deep in my chest. What kind of payments? Emily shook her head. I didn't hear everything, but Dad was furious. He told them to leave. I tried to picture my father yelling at someone. It almost never happened. So what happened next? I asked. Emily exhaled slowly. They threatened him. My stomach dropped. What kind of threat? Her voice lowered. They said if he didn't give them the ledger, they would come back. The garage felt suddenly very quiet. Too quiet. And they did, Emily continued. 2 weeks later. I leaned forward slightly. What happened that time? Emily's eyes drifted toward the floor. I never saw them again, she said. But Dad started acting different. How? He began locking everything, she said. His office, the garage, even the shed. That matched what I remembered. During the last few months of his life, my father had seemed distracted, always watching the road, always double-checking the doors at night. At the time, I thought it was just age. Now it sounded like something else entirely. And then he changed the will, Emily said quietly. I stared at her. So you knew about that too? She nodded. I found the draft he threw away. My heart beat faster. Then why pretend tonight was a surprise? Emily looked at me carefully. Because I didn't know where the real inheritance was. There it was. The truth. She hadn't cared about the house or the money in the bank. She was looking for whatever my father had hidden, the ledger. And suddenly the black box under the garage floor felt far more dangerous than I had realized. Emily, I said slowly, if those men wanted the ledger, why didn't you tell the police? She let out a quiet laugh. You think I didn't try? I frowned. What do you mean? She looked at me with a strange expression. Because the police already know about it. My stomach twisted. That doesn't make sense. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. They know, because some of them are in it. A cold chill ran through my entire body. Corrupt cops, secret payments, a hidden ledger. Suddenly my father's plan made terrifying sense. He hadn't just been testing Emily. He had been protecting something big enough to destroy powerful people. And that's when Emily said the one thing that made the situation explode. The men who came to the house? I looked up. Yes? They're coming back tomorrow. My heart slammed against my ribs. Why tomorrow? Emily met my eyes, because I told them the ledger might be here. The words hit me like a punch. You what? Her voice stayed calm. Relax. I didn't say we had it. Emily, I said we might find it tonight. My entire body went cold. You used me as bait. She shrugged slightly. Think of it as motivation. Anger flooded through me. Those men threatened Dad. And they'll kill us if they think we're hiding the ledger, I snapped. Emily didn't respond. Instead, she glanced slowly toward the red toolbox. And that's when I realized something horrifying. She had figured it out. Her eyes slowly lifted back to mine, and she said quietly, You already opened the hatch, didn't you? But instead of answering, she looked toward the garage door. Her entire posture changed instantly. Every muscle in her body went rigid. I followed her gaze. At first I didn't see anything, then I heard it. A car engine. Slowly approaching the house. My pulse jumped. Tell me that's not them, I whispered. Emily's voice came out barely audible. They weren't supposed to come tonight. Headlights flashed across the garage window. Bright, blinding. The car stopped outside. Neither of us moved. Then a second engine appeared in the distance. Another vehicle, coming down the road. My heart started racing. That's 2 cars, I said. Emily looked genuinely terrified now. That's not possible. Car doors slammed outside. Heavy footsteps approached the house. More than 2 people, maybe 4, maybe more. Emily grabbed my arm suddenly. We need the box. Now. I shook my head. We don't even have the key. Her grip tightened. Then we take the whole thing. Before I could respond, a loud knock echoed through the front door of the house. 3 slow, heavy knocks, the kind that made your stomach twist. A man's voice followed. Calm. Cold. We know you're home. Emily and I exchanged a look. Neither of us spoke. Then the voice came again. Your father owed us something. A pause. Then the words that made my blood run cold. And we're here to collect. My mind raced. If Emily knew about the hatch, there was no point pretending anymore. But I also couldn't tell her everything. Not about the second key, Not about the lake. I forced my face to stay calm. You said you saw Dad hide the box? I replied. So yeah, I found the hatch. Emily studied me carefully. And? And it was locked. That part wasn't a lie. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You didn't open it? No. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension in the garage felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Emily exhaled slowly. Then we still have time. Time for what? I asked. To find the key. My stomach tightened. She didn't know about the lake. Not yet. That could take days, I said. Emily shook her head. No. Her voice was firm. Dad wouldn't hide it somewhere random. That was true. My father had always been precise, methodical, which meant if Emily started thinking like him, she might figure it out. I needed to leave. Soon. I'm tired, I said finally. We can deal with this tomorrow. Emily's eyes sharpened. Tomorrow those men are coming. Exactly. She stepped closer. So, we need the box tonight. The pressure in the room kept building. I shrugged slightly. Well, unless you suddenly found the key, we're stuck. Emily stared at me for several seconds. Then she surprised me. She laughed. Not loudly, just a short, bitter laugh. You know what the worst part is? She said. What? Dad trusted you. The words hit harder than I expected. What's that supposed to mean? Emily shook her head slowly. He always believed you were the good one. And you weren't? I replied. Her eyes flashed. You think I wanted things to end up like this? Yes. The answer slipped out before I could stop it. Emily froze. For a moment, something raw crossed her face. Hurt. Anger. Maybe both. Then she took a slow breath. You don't understand anything, she said quietly. Then explain. The knocking stopped, but somehow that made everything worse. The silence outside felt heavy, like the men on the other side of the door already knew we were inside. Waiting. Emily's grip on my arm tightened. We're out of time, she whispered. My mind was racing. The box, the ledger, the men outside. If they found it, whatever my father had protected would disappear forever. But if we kept it, we might not survive the night. Another voice came from the front porch. Lower. Older. Break the door. Emily inhaled sharply. That was all the motivation we needed. Move the toolbox, she said quickly. We both rushed to the red toolbox and dragged it aside. The metal scraped loudly across the concrete floor. For a second, I froze. What if they heard that? But then a loud crack echoed from inside the house. They had kicked the door open. Open the hatch! Emily hissed. I shoved the key into the lock again and turned it. Click. The hatch lifted open. I grabbed the black metal box and pulled it out of the compartment. It was heavier than before, or maybe my hands were just shaking more. Footsteps echoed through the house, closet doors opening, drawers slamming. They were searching. Emily grabbed the box. Where's the key? She demanded. I don't know, I snapped. That lie burned in my throat, but I had no choice. She shook the box violently. Then how do we open it? Another sound came from the hallway. Closer this time. A man's voice. This way. Garage. My heart jumped. They're coming, I whispered. Emily's eyes darted around the room. Then suddenly she made a decision. Take the truck. What? Dad's truck, she said quickly. The keys are on the wall. I looked at the old pickup parked beside us. You're coming too. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she shoved the box into my arms. No. What do you mean, no? Her voice dropped to a whisper. They want the ledger, not you. My stomach twisted. You're going to stall them. Someone has to. The footsteps in the house grew louder. The garage door handle rattled. My pulse exploded. Emily, this is insane. She stepped closer and grabbed my jacket. For a brief moment, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Not greed, not calculation, fear, and regret. "Listen to me," she said quietly. "Dad didn't leave the ledger for money." I frowned. "Then why?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Because it proves everything." "Everything?" Before I could ask what she meant, the garage door slammed open. 2 men stepped inside. Tall, heavy jackets. One of them held a flashlight. The beam swept across the room, then landed on us. The older man smiled slowly. "Well," he said calmly, "looks like we found the family." Emily stepped in front of me instantly, blocking their view of the box in my arms. "You're trespassing," she said. The man laughed. "Oh, sweetheart. That's the least illegal thing happening tonight." The second man took a step forward, then another. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. The older man's eyes studied us carefully. Then his gaze dropped, straight to the box. His smile disappeared. "Interesting," he murmured. Emily spoke quickly. "You're too late." The man tilted his head. "Too late for what?" Emily didn't hesitate. "For the copies." The room went silent. The man's expression changed instantly. "What copies?" Emily shrugged slightly. "The ledger." My stomach dropped. What was she doing? But then I saw the flicker in the man's eyes, uncertainty. She was bluffing. Emily continued calmly. "Dad knew you'd come back." The man took another slow step toward us. And he made sure the information wouldn't die with him. The tension in the room exploded. The man's jaw tightened. "Where are they?" Emily smiled faintly. "That's the fun part." The second man raised something in his hand. A gun. My blood turned to ice. "Enough games," he growled. "Give us the box." Emily didn't move. Instead, she said the last thing I expected to hear. "Daniel." My eyes snapped to her. "Drive." And before the men could react, she shoved me backward toward the truck. Everything happened in seconds. Emily pushed me hard enough that I stumbled into the side of Dad's old truck. The black box almost slipped from my hands. "Go!" she shouted. The men reacted instantly. "Stop him!" One of them lunged forward. I grabbed the truck keys from the wall and yanked the driver's door open. Behind me I heard shouting, then a loud crash. Emily had thrown a metal stool at them. "Daniel, move!" I jumped into the truck and slammed the door. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. The engine roared to life. Headlights flooded the garage. In the rearview mirror I saw the men wrestling with Emily. One of them shoved her against the workbench. My chest tightened. For a split second I almost stopped. Almost ran back. But then I remembered what she said. "Drive." I slammed the gas pedal. The truck shot backward out of the garage, tires screeching against the concrete. Then I spun the wheel and sped down the dark road. My heart was hammering. Every shadow on the road looked like another car chasing me. But nothing followed. Not yet. 10 minutes later, I was already outside town, heading toward the lake, toward the place my father had written about. My hands were still shaking when I parked near the old wooden pier. The place looked exactly the same as it had when I was a kid. Quiet water, tall trees, the creaking dock stretching out over the lake. But tonight the silence felt different, heavier, like the whole place was holding its breath. I grabbed a flashlight from the truck and walked onto the pier. The boards groaned under my feet. 4th plank. That's what the letter said. I counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. The board looked normal, but when I pushed on it, one side lifted slightly. My heart started pounding again. I pried it up carefully, and there it was, a small metal key taped underneath. My father had hidden it perfectly. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I grabbed the key and hurried back to the truck. The black box sat on the passenger seat, silent, waiting. I slid the key into the small lock. It turned easily. Click. I opened the lid slowly. Inside were several thick notebooks, a flash drive, and a sealed envelope. I opened the envelope first. My father's handwriting stared back at me again. Daniel, if you're reading this, then Emily made the right choice. My chest tightened. Right choice? The letter continued. The ledger in this box contains proof of years of corruption in this town. My pulse quickened. Police officers, city officials, contractors, all taking money. Suddenly, everything Emily said made sense. The threats, the men, the fear in Dad's eyes. The letter continued. I couldn't trust anyone with it. Then came the line that hit me the hardest. Except the two of you? I read it again. The two of you. My father hadn't been testing just Emily. He had been testing both of us. The next line explained everything. If Emily helped you escape tonight, then she chose family over greed. My throat tightened. And if that happened, you must finish what I started. I looked at the flash drive in the box. Evidence. Enough to destroy powerful people. My phone suddenly vibrated. The sound nearly made me jump. Unknown number. For a moment I hesitated, then I answered. Hello? There was static, then a familiar voice, tired, shaky, but alive. Daniel? My heart jumped. Emily? Her voice was weak. I'm okay. I got away. Relief crashed through me. Where are you? She took a shaky breath. On my way to you. I looked down at the box again, at the notebooks, the flash drive, the truth my father died protecting. Good, I said quietly. Because for the first time that night, I finally understood what our real inheritance was, and we were about to use it.